I'm Jessica Minton for IB Times TV, and joining me today is Peter Friedman, who's the chairman and CEO of LiveWorld. Now, Peter, thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Jessica.
Now, this is a busy week for you since Social Media Week is going on. Now, tell me a little bit about your company, because I know that you did previously work for Apple. How did you get into what you're doing now?
Well, that's a good question, because we've been doing social media for a long time. We started the company 18 years ago doing online community and social media. We had a consumer service, was kind of a precursor to Facebook, a little ahead of our time, and doing services for very large brands in online community and social media to help them deepen their customer relationships. And before that, we were at Apple, and I was there for quite a long time, Steve Jobs, the whole thing. And that's what we did there too. My core group that started this company ran Apple's industry-wide online community or social network called Apple Link. Out of that came America Online and Salon. We had another one called eWorld. So we were doing it for quite a while there. And frankly, I remember presenting all about this at the Apple executive staff and saying, oh, one day this is going to be bigger than anything. It's going to be bigger computers, it's going to be on phones and TVs, everybody's going to do everything through it. And it was really quiet. And I turned around and they were like laughing at me. They're not laughing now. They laughed then. But there is an important connection here, because one of the core elements of Apple Computer is that you use technology to create an emotional, cultural experience for people. It's not really about the technology, it's about the human experience. And my group at Apple, and then coming and starting this company, brought that out onto the internet in the form of online community and social media, that we're trying to create a three-dimensional cultural experience for people. Through dialogue, they can build relationships. And we have a lot of technology, but our technology is designed to let our humans do a better job faster, more effectively, higher quality, and really create a personal and social experience for our clients with and among their customers.
At Social Media Week, you have co-sponsored an event with Pfizer, who's also one of your clients, about how regulated industries, whether it's pharmaceutical companies or finance companies or consumer packaged goods companies, can basically humanize themselves more to try to connect with their customers. How exactly, if something does come up, if there's some sort of crisis that a company does have, how do they deal with those legal issues, and what sort of strategies can brands use to try to connect with those consumers?
Well, this is something that applies to any brand, although if you're in a regulated industry or very consumer sensitive, it's a little trickier, because you got all kinds of laws and other issues going on, how you have to handle things and what you can say. So first off, let's define a social media crisis. Now, in social media, we might call it a minefield, because they're just going to pop up everywhere. And the first thing you have to do as a brand is understand that it's going to happen and you can't avoid it and you can't run away from it, because if you run away, it's going to happen without you. So you just have to accept that. The second thing is you want to build a cultural experience for your clients that creates your customers, that creates loyal customers, involves them, engages them, creates brand advocates before a crisis happens. You don't build relationships in the middle of a crisis. You have to have them already, so those people are there to emerge as brand defenders. The next thing is to have a plan, have people trained. You don't want to figure out how to deal with a crisis when it first starts happening. And the place most companies get into trouble is a crisis happens and they're all running around, they don't know who to talk to, they don't have everything prepared, and they may react wrong or they take too long. So you have to have a plan, you have to have stakeholders and escalation paths defined, have responses ready for different things, so you're ready to go. Then you have to be on alert, and then the next thing is understand there's a lot of different types of social media crises. Our company's developed a framework of like 4 levels, DEFCON 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have to respond to these in different ways. Then there's different types of crisis. It could be a product issue, it could be an irate customer, it could be an organization that's kind of political and is out to attack you. Each of these you have to handle differently. And last is, how do you really handle it? You don't try to control it. This is no longer a traditional PR model. It's not command and control. You have to embrace it, you diffuse it, you let yourself get beaten up on your own Facebook page, and you allow brand defenders to emerge. Doesn't mean you don't respond, but you don't try to argue it. You just kind of have to manage it. And the really interesting thing that most people miss is most of this is marketing, right? I mean, you're doing social media as a brand to get attention. If you have a crisis, you got the attention. How can you flip that and make it good for you? Take the issue, embrace it, listen, and say, hey, that's a good point. Let's talk about that some more, and then try to guide it over to what you really want talked about as well.
Now, Wal-Mart recently issued their earnings, and they came in below what analysts were expecting. Now, when it comes to big box retailers, what kind of strategies can they use to try to connect with their consumers and their customers more?
Well, retail's a really interesting area. It was one of the last areas to really come into social media because more than anybody, they want to know what's the transaction. Am I getting somebody in the store today? What's happening? What's happening? And social media is still kind of new. We've been doing it forever, but it's still kind of new. And the measurements and all that were working out. So it took retailers a while to get into it. But now that they're into it the most. And the reason is, of all the companies in the world, they are the ones that have the most conversations directly with customers. So my main advice to retailers is to think of yourself online as a merchant in the same way you would in a store. And the on-page experience should be like the in-store experience because people are going to think it is. So you want to kind of merchandise the experience and create an environment through dialogue and relationships that personalizes and socializes your brand and lets people feel this is who you are and this is who your people are and this is what the experience will be when you go into the store. And you apply that and the crisis discussion together, and that's how you work it.
Who are some of the clients that you're currently working with?
Well, Wal-Mart, who's a fascinating client, an extraordinary company, very customer-centric, very much in the news all the time. Pfizer, who we're co-sponsoring a big part of Social Media Week, and they're a big drug company, and they also make chapstick. And as an example, a lot of people say, I'm addicted to chapstick, and you think that's harmless. But the word addicted is a bad word to the Food and Drug Administration. So that's an adverse event. And we've really worked with Pfizer on how do you handle that and separate the ones which is like, I love strawberry, smiley, smiley, from somebody who's saying, I'm addicted to chapstick. So you have to really work that kind of a thing. And then big consumer packaged goods companies like Procter & Gamble and Smucker's, a lot of financial services companies, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, American Express. They're all pretty big brands, and they all really care about their customers. But they've all spent 60 years in broadcast in one-way medium, and now the customers are right there in front of them, and they got to talk to them.
And finally, what do you think are the biggest things companies can take away from Social Media Week, and what sort of strategies and advice do you have for them?
Well, I think the number one thing is to realize that social media has come a long way. It's come from a few people talking about it and kind of getting laughed at, to an experiment, to another channel, to a main channel, to a mainstream marketing and support and insight venue with big budgets. So big executives are looking at it. And now what's happening, and you can even see some of this in Social Media Week, but it's going to take a few years, is people are getting the realization that it's not even just a mainstream marketing venue. It's becoming the context and platform for almost everything you do. Because we have generations growing up with it, and the biggest growth areas like in the baby boomers, actually a little older. So everybody's embracing this, and it's part of everything everybody does. So you really have to think about everything you do now in terms of how does it play in social media and what's happening. And it's becoming its own ecosystem. So we used to talk about IBM as an ecosystem, or Apple, or AOL, or Facebook, and they are. But now the whole social media world is, and everything's sort of beginning to play with everything else. So you have to sort of say, it's here, I'm inside it, it's all around me, what am I going to do with it? And not even think of it as just a tactic, but your entire context.
Well, Peter, it was so great having you here with us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.